Endurance Junkie Podcast, episode 85. Hey Junkie, thanks for joining me on a new episode of the Endurance Junkie Podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest, and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. Now, if you like these little interviews and don't want to miss any future episodes, just head over to iTunes or Stitcher and simply subscribe to the show. Now, I would also like to thank everyone who has also left a rating and review there. It's just great reading your feedback, and it keeps me motivated to bring you more new shows. So if you haven't done so already, please consider leaving me a rating and a review next time you're there. Oh, and we're also on Spotify now, so if that's your preferred medium, just type Endurance Junkie Podcast in the search bar, select the show, and click the follow button. Right, today we have Kriss Hendy on the show, and Kriss is a strength coach who specializes in injury rehabilitation and strength training for endurance performance. And Kriss strongly believes that strength and conditioning are a commonly overlooked area of training within the endurance community, where the sole focus is on the sport in question. And this may suffice in the short term, but it will ultimately lead in long-term injury issues. So hi Kriss, thanks for coming on the show today. Can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself, your own sporting background, and how you ended up into coaching?
Hi, Peter. Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. My background, once I finished my sport and exercise science degree back in the UK, I got quite quickly into training the general population and working a lot with athletes from different sort of backgrounds and different sports, anything from basketball, soccer, rugby, ice hockey, just a number of different sports. And I did that for a number of years and collected my sort of strength and conditioning qualifications along the way. And then me and my wife, Polly, we decided to pack up and move across to Australia. She was one of the reasons being a better climate, but the other one was Polly was a pretty good age group triathlete back in the UK, and we wanted to. It was a good opportunity for us to sort of jump across and train with some of train in a better climate and see how good she could get. Whilst we had that sort of time in our life, and quite quickly fell onto the east coast of Australia in the Byron Bay and Lennox Head area, and Polly fell in with a pretty good group of endurance athletes, triathletes specifically, and she quickly got her pro license and was able to race for about a year in the pro field. But as a result, I was my business. I set myself up in Lennox, and I was obviously realised quickly how many endurance-based athletes there were in that community. Triathletes, ultra runners, long-distance swimming. There was a real whole host of endurance-based athletes over that way. So my clientele became pretty much 95% endurance-based athletes. Now, coming from a team sport background, I kind of it was kind of a shift in how I sort of approached athletic training. But obviously living with a triathlete for best part of 10 years now, it's kind of I kind of understand how they think, and our social circle very quickly became triathletes, endurance-based athletes, and so as a result, you quickly realised that they were kind of lacking or needing some basic strength and conditioning into their programming, and as a result, that evolved into me working with them, and it's been a really good 5 years in Australia ever since.
So how important is strength training then for endurance athletes?
Strength and conditioning is the underpinning. It's the foundation stone for all performance. So no matter what sport or performance goal you have, or just health goal you have, it really is having a good sound body and balanced body and having just a basic bodyweight strength is just the foundation stone for all and everything we do. So to specifically say to target the endurance athlete, the amount of volume and intensity that an athlete expects to put through their body, the basic requirement has to be that your body is healthy and balanced. So it's free from niggles, free from any imbalances from previous injury. So it's the most important thing in my point of view. You have to have that solid foundation before you put any sort of intensity or any type of sport specific training into it. So for me, it's the underpinning of everything.
Yeah. So what do you see as the more common problems then with endurance athletes? Where do they lack strength?
It really is. There's some typical injuries and niggles you might find, and weaknesses you'll find across the whole community, across the whole population. Sort of lack, and that just comes from sort of lifestyles. A lot of the time, it comes from lifestyle leading up into the sport. Postural problem, upper back, and lack of glute activation. It's quite a common area, but it's having that balance across the body, really.
Yeah, okay. And do you see like different problems with, for example, like a triathlete compared to an ultra runner or an obstacle course racer or a mountain biker?
Well, with endurance athletes, especially, it's all about the amount of volume that they're looking to put through their body. So, I mean, when we talk about specific sports, I mean, with a lot of the athletes I work with, you see the first things you see really is the amount of how much volume and intensity they expect to put into their bodies, and we have to be able to to develop a stronger, sounder body to be able to do that.
Okay, and I think a lot of people will go to the internet to find advice and find strength routines, and when you go on Twitter or Facebook, you get flooded by these articles like these are the only 10 strength exercises you should do as a runner, or never do these exercises as a cyclist. There's so much information out there. How do you know what's good advice and what's bad?
Yeah, great point, Peter. Obviously with social media and the internet now, that we are a kind of saturated amount of information out there now, and there's so many different exercises for this and so many exercises for that, and I call it fluff. There's a lot of fluff in training nowadays, and with endurance athletes, their single focus is their sport they do, and so you really need to just strip back all the noise when it comes to the exercises we see, and you just look at the fundamental foundational exercises. So these, and that's pretty much what I preach, and what my programming is very much about is stripping back the noise and really making sure the athlete is working on those sort of functional full body movements, and making sure that they are well balanced, and so they're working on those single leg weaknesses, single leg discrepancies, because the most important thing really is the fact that they don't have a great deal of time. With the amount of volume of training they're doing, especially full-time triathletes, you're putting a lot of time, 20, 30 hours of training into your week. You don't have a great deal of time to train, to get into the gym. And so the exercises you're doing have to be sort of the best bang for your buck exercises. And that being exercises like the squat, like single leg exercises like the lunge or the step up. And so when it comes to all the different information out there, really the people that, these social media sort of trainers are just trying to draw your attention in. But the fact is, end of the day, the best strength coaches and strength trainers in the world are just doing the fundamental exercises time and time again. And that really is sort of the sum of any good program, is doing the simple and effective exercises consistently well.
Yeah, so I guess your main advice is there, if you go on a strength program, just get in touch with a strength coach and get a personalized program.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, everyone has very different backgrounds. Whenever you're working with anyone, you have to take into, whether you're a coach, strength coach, triathlon coach, swimming coach, you have to take in a number of variables. Those variables being obviously the life leading up to meeting each other. What they've done as a sport growing up, what's their day-to-day lifestyle look like, what type of job do they perform. So there's so many variables that you have to take into consideration when you're working with any type of athlete, that you're foolish to ignore that, because they'll all have telltale signs on that athlete in front of you. So when you're developing a strength program, yes, there are certain exercises that you can certainly prescribe that work that are sort of effective, and as I say, best bang for your buck. They kind of just work. They work for the masses. So, but yeah, I mean, my advice would be to find an experienced coach, an experienced strength trainer that has who understands the nature of endurance sports. I think that's one of the kind of the not scariest things, but a lot of trainers out there, and I think it's one of the biggest things that probably puts off a lot of athletes, especially triathletes I've worked with using coaches in the past, is the fact that they kind of walk into a gym and they're talking to someone that doesn't understand that how much volume they're putting into their body, or how much how much training they're already doing, run, bike, swim, or just running, or so you have to have someone that understands the nature of the sport you're looking to get better in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and you already touched on the subject of fitting it all in. You've got a busy training schedule, 20 hours of swimming, biking, and running for a triathlete, for example, and then you try to fit in some strength work. And I think in my case that would be, I would like skip a warm up and just go straight into the strength exercises. But how important is a good warm up for strength training?
Yeah, so this is certainly evolved over the years for me, because we all have, again, depending on the education and the experience the coach has had, everyone has sort of different approaches, but there really is a very simple framework that any good coach should follow, and that is obviously that warm up. So what does that warm? Getting the body moving and sort of just identifying how you're feeling on that specific day, and then we get into some basic activation work where you're trying to light up those key areas of weakness, and then we get into that strength work. So skipping a warm up is probably fundamentally the worst thing you could do, really, because when it comes to every day we're doing different things, working, playing with the kids, we're out and about. We need to know how we're feeling on a day-to-day basis, and we need to be working on key areas of weakness, or not weakness, but tightness. So, for instance, if we're sitting at a desk all day long, or we're sitting behind a steering wheel of a car, we just need to be working on hip mobility. We need to be working on upper back, working on our posture, we're working on our shoulder range of motion. We need to be working on these key major movers, major joints on a regular basis. So if I was to say to anyone, we work with a 3-step principle in all our programming, and it's pretty simple 3 steps. It's mobility as our first step, activation is our second step, and our third step is then we introduce the strength work. So mobility has to be number one. You have to work on mobility, flexibility through a number of different exercises, but just having a good movement routine on a day-to-day basis and working on those key areas. And then we go into that activation work where you're just looking to prime certain areas of weakness, or certain target muscle groups that we're looking to work, and then only then, once we've got that good movement and mobility, and we're activating those key areas, then only then do we actually start working on the strength. Because jumping straight into these movements, so for instance, like you say, jumping straight into your strength program there, you without good range of motion, without activating those dormant muscle groups, you're never going to be performing those strength exercises effectively, and so you're always going to be underperforming on those movements. So that's why we follow that process, and that's why mobility and how you feel in your own body is probably the single most important thing that I would tell any athlete to work on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I guess that's always different for every athlete when they come see you for advice. It's going to be different for everyone, I guess, depending on the situation that they're in. So how'd you go about then when somebody comes to you and he wants to be trained? Yeah,
great question again. So there are, whenever you work with anyone, you never make any assumptions. Like everyone has it's probably the funnest part of when you meet people is sitting down with them and finding out about their life story and what's led up to that point, because everyone has such an amazing life story. They don't even realize it sometimes, but as I said, there's so many variables that have to come into you have to take into consideration: previous injuries, sports they've played, and they all have telltale signs in the way we move and the way we perform. So when we come in, anyone has to sort of goes through like a basic movement screen. Depending on, again, your education and your experience, that movement screen will consist of a number of different exercises. And the movement screen is just simply, we're just watching watching you move. I'm watching you move to see, do you move comfortably? One of my mantra I follow is, if you move poorly, you'll perform poorly. So whoever you are, first thing we need to address is, are you comfortable in your own skin? Can you reach down, touch your toes? Can you sit down and stand up from a seated position comfortably? Can you reach your hands up overhead? Just these key areas that, as a healthy human being, we should be able to tick a box. And if you can't, then they're the first things we have to address. We have to make sure that you're comfortable. So movement screening in some shape or form, that's certainly the first step. Then we go into sort of some basic testing. And again, this ranges depending on the athlete or depending on their training goal, or it might just be a health goal. But again, we do some basic testing, looking at imbalances, single side strength. All of us are predominantly stronger one side more than the other. How much so is amazingly different. I'm very lucky to have worked with a number of different types of athletes, and you'd be surprised at how many of the top performers are significantly stronger on one side. And you imagine over a longer period of time how that, especially over 4, 5, 6 hours of performance, how those small little discrepancies can become big things. So when we look at basic testing, and then we get into those sort of fundamental strength exercises. So we look at their basic squat pattern. How can they and then which end of the day, these strength exercises I put them through again are just looking at how comfortable they are. Are they with their main joints, ankle, knee, hip, shoulder joints, putting some load through them, and then building up those joints. So, building some stability and structure around those joints. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So that also requires face-to-face contact with the coach. I mean, it's not something you can do online.
Well, it's both. I mean, obviously, ideal world, you're in front of an experienced coach on a weekly basis. I mean, that is the ideal situation, and that's what we've endeavoured to try and do with our strength for endurance community, is really start to connect people with just experienced trainers. There's a lot of professionals out there, but we're looking to put athletes and clubs and coaches in contact with experienced trainers. I mean, that's one of our goals when we first set out with strength for endurance, was to just get people talking to the right people, but the more experienced people. But then obviously, living in Australia for the last 5 years, you realise how remote people can be, and and so you have to be able to give them, we want to be able to give them the resources to be able to train, on their own. And obviously with that, there is limitations. Obviously, not having a coach in front of you and able to work one-on-one, there's always going to be limitations to that. But when you're working with bodyweight exercises, bodyweight movements, there is a level of safety that you can work with, where you can actually prescribe exercises remotely, and you can get significant improvements in your performance just by following good habits and forming new habits and following a good programming.
Yeah. Okay. It's some practical advice here. It's off season now here in the Northern Hemisphere. What do you think athletes should focus on during this time of the year?
Yeah. So this time of year is kind of, obviously you're reevaluating, looking back at the season. You're looking back at your races. You're looking ahead to you're putting in your diary the big races, your key races, and so you're looking at. You've got to sort of step back and look at yourself and go, okay, well, what was kind of slowing me down this year? What did I pull up with? Have I got any sort of underlying issues or niggles that I'm just kind of ignoring? And this is the time to start, addressing those. And it doesn't need to be too difficult. It really is like just finding a method or a routine that works for you. And that's obviously that comes from a good coach. They'll give you a number of, all good coaches will be able to give you a good methodology or that fits in with your current lifestyle. So obviously with me, there's no one size that fits all really. You're always trying to find different ways to help people. Everyone's got busy lives. So with people I'm working with right now, it's very much about, depending on their work life, their family life, giving them giving them the right, the manageable chunks of training sessions. So, I prescribe two sessions a week, 30 to 45 minutes in total. And right now they're looking at just those fundamental steps that we I always sort of talk about, which is got to be looking at your mobility, got to be looking at incorporating some form of good movement practice into your week. If you're not doing things like yoga or Pilates at least once a week, then I'll certainly be prescribing you something along those lines, where I'll be giving 2 or 3 movement exercises that will start to open up your hips, upper back. And then, really is just looking at some of those fundamental exercises, those big sort of functional movements like the squat, the lunge, the step up, the upper body row. And they're the things that I would really want all of you listening to start thinking about getting into, just some key exercises that are going to work on your own weaknesses, which you're all aware of.
Yeah. Going to the other side of the world, Southern Hemisphere, it's early racing season there. Would you advise the same thing, or would it be too late for these athletes to incorporate strength training? Not
at all. So long gone are the days when it's sort of strength and conditioning is sort of perceived as like an off season. It has to be done throughout the year. It's an ongoing thing. It's something that it's something that has to be addressed on a week to week basis. Yes, in the off season we can put in kind of big blocks of sort of strength work, but throughout the season you have to have a consistent strength routine that you're following. And it's, as I said, it's only maybe 2 to 3 sessions a week, but it has to be something. So when we're talking about the Southern Hemisphere, yes, everyone I work with has a regular routine that they're following. How much is obviously dependent on the volume and intensity of the individual's training and how much they can fit in. So some of them, it might just be 1 session or 2 smaller sessions, maybe 20 minutes long, but addressing their own issues. And that's those issues or those weaknesses. That's what the coach-athlete relationship's about, is working out what they are, and they quickly come to the surface. And a lot of the time, it's just having a good movement practice on a week-to-week basis. So those people currently in season, or they have to be doing something on a week-to-week basis.
Okay. I have a bit of a question from personally as well, but I think I sort of know the answer already. But I have a background in triathlon. I did about 10 years of active triathlon, but I haven't done hardly anything in the last couple of years, family, small kids and stuff like that. So I completely lost all my fitness, completely lost all my strength. But I sort of want to get, back into it and get fit again. So my main goal now is just to improve my general fitness, lose fat. How important would strength training be for me? And would my main goal be, just putting in miles-based training, swimming, biking, running? Or do I have to focus on strength training first and get my body ready to do the swim, biking, and running?
So we're looking to, if you're looking to get back into things, and at the end of the day, we want to prepare your body for what you want to do. So I would certainly suggest you having a program that you follow, a strength program that you follow, just getting into a good routine of just getting into those key areas, working on mobility, working on, your range of motion again. If you haven't done much for a while, then you can certainly assume that obviously with age, everything's kind of doesn't recover as quickly. So we've got to.
I'm a bit rusty, and I can't touch my feet anymore. So.
So they're just key areas that we can assume. I can make an assumption that if you haven't done a lot for a while, then I can make an assumption that you're going to be a little bit, as I say, a little bit stiff in areas. So we have to get you moving, feeling better in your own body again. We certainly start focusing on some areas of obvious weakness, probably, glutes, upper back, lower back. We want to, and you being a man, I would certainly be asking you to start focusing a little bit more on that. And then your strength work. I would certainly have you just doing some basic 4 or 5 strength exercises on a week-to-week basis that you're just working on getting those major muscle groups stronger again, and in sync and working together. Because strength training essentially is, obviously, we're just trying to organize your body better. So with you, I want you organizing your body better so that when you do go out on those long run, bike, swim efforts again, you're not shocking the hell out of your body again. You know, your body, we're preparing your body for what you want to do with it. So for someone like yourself getting back into it, you're kind of the perfect demographic that I work with. You know, like you spent time away from the sport, or from, you know, when you're between sort of 15 and 30, you get away with a lot. You know, our bodies can endure a lot of whatever, you know, stress. You can pretty much do whatever you want with your body. And then we had this sort of period of time where we kind of were focusing on family and careers, and, you know, we don't do a great deal of maybe physical activity. And then, well, whatever, 40 plus or whatever, 35 plus, we're looking at, okay, I want to get back into sport. I'm going to give a marathon a crack. I might give an ultra a crack. I might give an Ironman a crack. But our bodies unfortunately aren't, you know, prepared for this. And so having a good sound, sort of building that strength up and getting that strength back into your body, making sure it's, you know, it's firing on all cylinders from the get-go, is going to prevent the onset of injury or niggles or just poor performance, you know. And so, yeah, for you, without a shadow of a doubt, get you onto a very simple strength program which incorporates mobility, there's activation work, and then we get you some basic strength work, and then you can do what you want. You know, you can get out there, you can hit the trails, you can run, bike, swim, but at least then I know, and you know, that you're ticking the box, okay? You know, and you're realizing, okay, I'm a little bit weak on one side, or I'm a little bit, you know, I need to work on this to improve my swim, I need to work on this to improve my bike. But at least, because through this strength work, we're able to open your eyes to your own body. Because so often people just train, and they ignore, or they kind of just, they don't, you know, they're not listening to their body. But as soon as you awaken someone to what they need to work on, performance, health, all those markers all start to improve. So, yeah.
All right, thanks for that. Now we'll continue the conversation offline. Thanks for sound advice. How can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more and want to work with you?
Yeah, probably two places you can go to. My personal website, which is krisshendy.com, which is KRISSHENDY.com, and the Strength for Endurance business, which is strengthforendurance.com. And that's probably one of my biggest pushes at the moment. Is we're getting into the communities and really working with the clubs. And so we've just moved back over to the UK for the next year or so to sort of push the strength for endurance business, and we actually go into the clubs and we get in contact with the coaches, and we want to bring strength and conditioning to the endurance community. So we actually come in and we take you through these fundamental steps that I talk about on today's show, and we just show you how easy it is to get going at home or in the gym. So a really important point with me is it's not always about the gym. You know, I'm very much about getting people doing this at home, in the garden, at work. You know, these steps can be done anywhere, anytime, with minimal equipment. So this is one of my biggest passions, probably. It's just getting people doing it more, little and often. So
you developed like a small kit that people can use from almost anywhere.
Yeah, so the Strength for Endurance kit was an evolution. It came over the last sort of year working with triathletes and endurance runners. In the fact that, let's be honest, you know, the gym isn't for everyone. You know, it's a place of work for me. It's a place where I can work with people, but over the years I've realised that, you know, the gym isn't the best place for people, and so you have to get people into these better routines, and so we put together a Strength for Endurance kit, which includes suspension trainer, resistance bands, resistance loop bands, and some basic programming that they can follow via a booklet and online, which just takes them through these fundamental steps, this mobility, activation, and strength steps that you just have to be including in your day-to-day lifestyle, because it's a guarantee. You don't have any guarantees in life, but following some basic movement, good movement patterns, you're going to start feeling better in your own body and performing better as a result. So,
okay, cool. Yeah, feel free to give some love to your partners if you have them.
Well, as I said, I think we don't. We have obviously we work with a number of different clubs, but no. I think my last thing I probably want to say to everyone is just the fact that I would just want people to sort of just step back and look at their body, and just start to really work on their own foundations, build those foundations. Because if you start building those foundations now, building that foundational strength, it's going to last you the test of time. It's going to keep you doing the things that you love. So step back and look at yourself and go, okay, what do I need to work on? What am I ignoring? What are the things that I've been ignoring for a long time? How can I work on that?
That's pretty sound advice, and perfect to end the call. Thanks for your time, Kriss.
Thanks, Peter.
Guys, thanks for listening to this episode with Kriss Hendy. I hope this was as interesting for you as it was for me. Now, Kriss just launched his online coaching platform, which you can find on krisshendy.com. You can also find the link on the show notes page, with programs specifically designed for to fit into the lifestyles of the busy endurance athletes. So go check it out. There's a free 7-day trial that allows you to jump right in and have a look around. I've signed up, and it's a great tool to get you going. All right, thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time for a chat with Ellie Salthouse, where we will be talking about her 70.3 career and what it's like to train under the wings of Cyril Lindley. Thanks, guys. Cheers.